Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Kimberly Black-Rincan. I'm the director here at the ignITe Hub. We are so excited to offer our November Future of Technology Lunch and Learn on powering ignITe Hub through innovative AV technology. So welcome to our guests that we have here in the space. Welcome to our virtual guests who are joining us as well. We're glad that you could take some time out of your day to learn about, in this case, what I'm really excited about, we're actually talking about the hub and the vendor that we worked with to help set up our audio visual. So it's extra special, this topic, because it is an emerging technology, and we want to make sure that our community is aware of how did this space come to be and how is this technology being used here. I'd also like to thank Verizon Foundation for their generous sponsorship of this guest speaker series. So thank you to Verizon that we can have a wonderful lunch afterwards and build community. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest speaker today, Mr. Kevin Opeth. He is the Vice President of Audio Visual for Vision Technologies, LLC. Kevin leads the audio visual practice in all aspects, including sales, channel, strategy, estimating, delivery, integration, and service support. Kevin contributed to the success of some of Vision's largest audio-visual projects to date. He established the Technical Operations Department, which included a dedicated quality assurance program with successful results. Kevin also has industry experience in consultative technology design, problem solving, management, and leadership. He has various technical certifications and experience in the audio-visual field. So welcome, Kevin. We're so glad to have you here today.
How's everyone doing today? Good?
Good.
Awesome. So yeah, I really want to take this opportunity to really take and do a trip down memory lane. This establishment was put together a few years ago. We're coming on 2 years, a little bit past 2 years, and a lot of interesting technology kind of went into making this happen. And not only was it technology that made this happen, it was also teamwork and innovative thought and collaboration and a lot of things that go behind the technology that are actually just as important as the technology to implement. So to start, I'll just, next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. So a little bit kind of on the market itself. So global e-learning, when we're talking about that, we're talking about education across the world. It's an over $500 billion market. So when we talk about technology, that's everything from AV, IT, the wireless access points to give you Wi-Fi, your phone, cellular reinforcement, your computers you use, everything technology is kind of built into that. And out of that, 230 billion of that will be spent on strictly audiovisual equipment and systems, and by 2025. That's a lot of money, a lot of technology. So it's very important, and it really helps join together people together in a room, like some of us are here, and also join everybody together who are also not in the room, who are with us through Zoom, Teams, different UC platforms. So it really helps bring everybody together regardless of where you are. And that's really the important focus here. Slide, please. Okay, so kind of what we're going to talk about today is one, how did I get to where I'm at from a high level? A little bit about the ignITe Hub from my perspective. Some process and recipe for success. How do we get there? How do we make this a successful thing? Creating experience through technology. So it's not just about the actual parts and pieces of technology, but also how do we get there? And then what do we learn from this experience? What did we take away from it to make sure that we can do better in the future, and that we make this the best area for growth and expansion continually, right? You don't just install a project and then move on from it and never gets upgraded ever again, right? We look at it, we look at the things that could be improved, things that could be added to it for functionality and feature, and then we talk about how do we improve, right? And then finally, any feedback that I can provide on how you could also get to where I'm at and to how to implement these types of systems in Q&A. All right, so that's me. Show of virtual and local hands, but who here really enjoys having their face plastered all over Zoom and TV? Yeah, I'm not really a fan of it, so we'll go ahead to the next slide. So kind of a roadmap here. So just a little bit about me. I started, and why I'm so invested in Montgomery College is I started in technical school and community college. So I came up in a low income area. I was able to leverage as much of the opportunity and resources I could personally, which meant a lot of leveraging student finance loans, working for scholarships and things like that to really fight to get an education. And I took a lot of advantage of it, right? So coming out of college, I ended up being an intern, non-paid intern. I did some hands-on work. So I was assembling equipment racks, wiring things a little while ago, depending on how long you've been around, but 2004 seems like an eternity at this point. And then from there, through improvements and learning and involvement and growth, I went ahead and became a technology consultant. So I consulted, did a lot of design, a lot of consultation with clients and users, a big focus on higher ed. So I learned a lot about the space during that time. Fast forward some time, and then in 2015, I joined Vision. And from there, I've been with Vision for going on almost 9 years, which has been a great journey. And through Vision, I've grown my career through engineering to actually run a $30 million practice within a $200 million company. And finally, you never stop learning. So the cool thing is, when I was younger, I didn't have the opportunity to necessarily go to a 4-year college due to finances. But now that I've gone ahead and invested in myself and invested in growth, I'm taking a path to get my MBA. So really continuing learning is very important to me. So AV and education. AV can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. To me, it really means, how do we take technology? How do we take the ones and zeros? How do we take, Python and C# and all these coding languages, and how do we bring them together to actually interact with your human senses, right? You can look at ones and zeros, you can look at line code all day long in your eyes, but do they actually process what that means? Does it teach you anything if you're not a programmer? There's a lot of students in this college specifically who are taking other majors or taking things that aren't as technical, right? So how do we provide technology to them so that they can leverage the technology, they can learn, they can improve? And also, how do we take that same approach to people who are in Zoom, who are remote? During COVID, this was a big challenge, right? We wanted to make sure that the student body had the opportunity to learn, to feel like they're part of the community, to feel like they have the advantage and the reach to learn just like people who are able to attend locally. So a big focus in AV is about combining human sense and technology and digital together. So the big focus is for education right now, hybrid learning. So you may have heard the term HyFlex or hybrid learning. This is a great example of that. We're doing a local seminar. We also have people remotely, and we're able to bring both together so that everybody gets the same content, right? Same with interactive live. So not only can I talk to Zoom and people who are out there, they can also provide feedback to us. They can provide feedback to Kimberly, Q&A, questions. They can digitally raise their hand, right? So all these cool technologies don't just happen by luck. I mean, people had to put a lot of thought and effort into incorporating this and making sure that we can leverage that communication bidirectionally from both the local in-person and also remote. Then finally, another great thing we're leveraging here, and it's great for people who are unable to attend or may be interested 6 months down the road, or maybe a new student who didn't know this existed, or a new community member, is on-demand recording. So now we can take this opportunity where I'm able to share my information with everybody here. We're able to save it and archive it and make it readily available for people in the future to learn the same things that we talked about today. So all great technology is all tied to AV. All right. So what is the ignITe Hub? So we're in it. For those who are local, for those who are remote, you're seeing it. It's a collaborative space. This is a place where we wanted to bring together and have collaboration and really ignite and inspire innovation for the county. There's nothing that really gets me excited as much as when we think about how do we not only get people to continue to educate and learn, but also be inspired by that and actually take that information and become a better person, help other people, help the community, help a company or a local entity to improve and grow, right? It's really that inspiration that drives us as well. And the audiovisual technologies in here, we'll talk a little bit about them, but they help drive that, right? So there's the technology is kind of what's helping with the collaboration, making sure that we have the audio and the video going back and forth. It enhances those who are remote. So no longer back in the day are you using a cell phone on a table that's speakerphone. You have no idea what we're talking about. You can't see the content. You don't know what's happening. You kind of feel like you're not part of the actual discussion. Well, now with technology and AV, we can actually include you into that conversation. You can be in the car, you can be at your home in your home office, you can be at a Starbucks. And now with technology, we can leverage it so that we can bring everyone together to collaborate. So the goal in the hub was always to create an experience that was equal for both local and remote. We want to make sure that if you are unable to attend locally for whatever reason, or if you were planning to and then you had to switch off and do remote because of a life event, life happens, right? We could provide an opportunity and an experience to really let that happen and make you feel like you still attended, right? You weren't, not included, right? So part of that too is we want to look at technology, and we'll get into it a little bit more, but really making sure the technology was current, active, and made sense for what we're trying to do here. So we didn't want to use a bunch of things that were going to be old in a couple of years. We want to make sure that this was timeless, right? And we also want to provide flexibility, so as things upgrade, as things get better, we can upgrade the hub as well and make sure that we keep this up to date. All right. So I kind of talked a little bit about it before, but the big thing for me and for the hub is really the outreach. They do such a great job here of not just incorporating the student body, but also the community, bringing the community together to not just collaborate and interact, but to learn. It doesn't matter if you're 14, if you're 78, if you're 25, if you're down the street, or if you need to take a bus, or it does not matter, right? This place is available for everyone to collaborate, to learn, to ignite that sense of really growth and wanting to be better, right? So it's a great opportunity to, and I'm really appreciative I'm able to present. Grand opening was in 2022 in May, and yeah, it's been great. I mean, there have been a lot of people who've partnered to help the hub. Apple had a big part, the county had a big part. There was a lot of people who had to contribute and work together to make this what it is today. All right. So let's talk a little bit about how we got here. Recipes for success. I just rolled the dice and we figured it out, right? No thought went into this. Flexibility, coordination, communication. We're going to go into a little bit deeper, but when it comes to the technology, it talks about the technology being flexible, but it also can talk about the people and the processes and the design being flexible. We can't just create something in 2019 and roll it out in 2022 and expect it to not change. We have to be able to adapt with what the times and the technologies and everything. So really having that kind of ability to do so. Coordination, big into that is, it's not Vision Technology's responsibility to put a great system in here. It's the responsibility of everybody involved. And what I mean by that is, we don't want to assume that there's certain things you want and need in the community. We want to be part of it and help facilitate and make sure that we're giving everybody who's going to use the space, the technology they need, not just what Vision thinks, not just what I think. And then communicating those conversations back and forth, making sure that if we, as Vision, as an integrator, believe this is the system you want for the future, making sure that we explain ourselves clearly so that if it isn't, you can say, I know you say you want this, but this isn't really what we want. And this is what we want, so that we can pivot if we need to. Okay. So flexibility, iteration. Anyone who's ever been involved in design knows that you don't design something once and it's done. There's always revisions. There's always an initial design, and then you kind of iterate and improve, and then there's another design, and then you have conversations with end users and key stakeholders, and there's another revision. So a big part of this is understanding that design is an iterative, it's a long drawn out thing, and we want to make sure that everybody who needs to be involved is involved. Because if you're not, you could have issues where the systems aren't what you want them to be. Feedback from key stakeholders is very important, right? So making sure that we're presenting useful information that makes sense, and then we're getting the feedback back is very important. And then really talking about technology. So technologies like Apple and other key vendors and the cool things they bring to the table help us really provide a cool and unique experience. And then finally, the reality of the situation is the world. When we were delivering the system, COVID was happening. There were a lot of material challenges. We were unable to get material. So how do we work around that? How do we plan around that so that we can deliver the room and not it be 5 years down the road and we're still not done? So a lot of challenges happen there. Then coordination, right? So technology doesn't just live on its own. It's coordinated to the furniture. It's in the ceiling. It's everywhere. It's all behind the wall. It's in credenzas. I mean, there's a bunch of technology behind you don't know about potentially. All this has to happen, and it has to look good. It has to feel welcoming. You can't just walk into a room and it just feels real cold and like there's too much technology, but you don't know how to use it. It has to be welcoming. Same with infrastructure. When I talk about infrastructure, I'm talking about we have to coordinate with HVAC ducts, make sure that the noise coming out of the AC or heat isn't impacting the sound. We have to make sure that the lights are lined up properly with where we're doing so things look well. And we have to make sure wherever we're putting technology that there's not something else planned to be there. So we talk about ceiling coordination and stuff. And then safety. A big thing about integration and technology, and really it spans across technology as a whole. If you talk about cybersecurity, you talk about programming, there's safety considerations. And when I say safety, for what I do, that means making sure that devices don't fall out of the ceiling and hit somebody in the head and injure them, right? Or it could mean ADA compliance, so that if we have somebody with a wheelchair who needs accessibility, they're able to use the system without being limited or impeded. But even from a technology perspective, making sure the firmware we update on our hardware is the latest and greatest and doesn't have any security or vulnerabilities. Making sure that the code we've generated has been compiled properly and stored in a way that isn't readily accessible for people to access and apparently, potentially modify, right? Lou.
Welcome.
All right. And then finally, communication. So talk. Make sure we have proper meetings scheduled. Make sure that during those meetings, we're talking about the right things, we're reviewing the right documentation, conducting a proper needs analysis. So coming in before we implement, before we buy equipment, make sure that we understand what the needs are. And then once we kind of get into actual integration and delivery, making sure that there's status reports, scheduling, commissioning, documentation, stuff like that's really important to make sure everyone's on the same page and we're delivering a quality product. And then finally, celebration and informing everybody who's involved. So as the hub was being stood up, as things were happening, making sure that marketing's involved, social media, there's local support and they're attending and everyone understands the great effort that's going into making this a reality. So it's all part of the communication plan. All right, so I'm going to start talking less about the construction project, more about the technology. So it's a blend. And what I mean by that is when you're looking at technology, and this goes across the board, it could be anything from your home entertainment system to a huge auditorium somewhere to any type of technology you might implement. You should think of it as a blend. It shouldn't just be the most bleeding edge or leading edge technology. It should also involve things like things that are current and industry standard. There may be some things that are not as new, but are reliable and safe and work for what you're trying to do. You don't want to overcomplicate things, right? So really looking at that and then making sure you're taking all those different aspects and blending them to a system that actually works. Okay. No, you're good. What am I doing on time here? I'm not doing too bad. All right, let's start with all reliable. Does anybody know what that is by chance? I'm not a specific part number, but does that kind of resonate? Do you know what that is? No?
Old.
Oh, like old.
Old.
OLD. It's like old, reliable. No, but do you know what that picture is by
Switch.
chance?
The switch.
The switch?
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's a button that you push and it's been around for like a billion years, right?
Yeah.
Do we know why it's been around for a billion years? Any ideas why?
Yes.
Oh, you're cheating. You're using the tech. It works because it works, right? I mean, you don't want to just put a bunch of complex technology into a certain application because you want it to be fancy and have IoT and tie to your network and report back, KPIs and metrics if it's literally put in place to switch, right? So you start with things that are reliable, right? And things like switches and relays and all those technologies, they're great. I mean, they work when you apply them properly. When you look at complexity, don't make something that's simple complex. And this goes not just about what AV is about and all that. I mean, I'm talking about everything. If you're coding a system and you want to create all this code, why, if you can accomplish it in 10 lines, right? Like there's a nuance to that. There's an importance to being simplistic in what you do. It's also cheap. Switches aren't like $5 million. I mean, you can get a switch. That switch probably costs like $20 because it has a light on it. It's fancy, right? It's a fancy switch, has a light on it. If you were to do something that's more like robust and smart, quote unquote smart, I mean, you could be talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to do the same thing. So really the lesson here is pick your battles. There are going to be certain areas, and we'll talk about them moving on, where it's really important to have that fancy technology, but then there are going to be times where a literal switch will do the job just as well. Okay, so then the second part is talking about technology, new and industry standards. So these are things that are current, they're very readily available, and they're future set, they're future proof, meaning they're not going to expire, they're not going to become old school anytime soon, but they're also not like so new that they're just rolling them off the assembly line. So a couple of things to talk about here. AV over IP. Is anyone familiar with what that could even mean? Okay. So it's audiovisual stuff over a network, basically. Right now, so back in the day, everything was hardwired and all AV was kind of like you had to connect this to that. And if you have a home entertainment system, you're taking an HDMI plug, you plug it into the back of your TV, into your PlayStation, or into your cable box. That's kind of the old school way of doing it. Now with AV over IP, we can take video from anywhere in the campus. We can put it on the network, and then you're able to get it from anywhere in the campus and almost near zero latency. So you can take technology, you can take this presentation if you wanted to, and you would be able to share that anywhere in the world potentially. So AV IP is really cool technology. It's also high resolution, so 4K, 8K, high resolution type stuff. Beamforming microphones. So audio is interesting because everyone talks about audio being like how great it can be and how much we can hear, but nobody can actually visualize what audio looks like, right? You talk into a pod, and you don't know if it's working or not unless you're on the far end and you can tell. Yes?
Wait, so there's 8K? That's the thing?
Yeah, 8K resolution. Yep. It's been around for a while. It's not really relevant or prevalent in like normal day-to-day things, but when you talk about high-level broadcast, you're talking about huge video walls that could span buildings. You need that high resolution, or else things will look real blurry. But every year it becomes closer and closer to reality. Just like 4K when that came out, it came out a lot earlier than people actually knew. It was out for a while, but when it really kind of caught on to market share is when it became affordable. When you could go to a Best Buy or whatever and buy a TV, that's when it really became exciting. So.
Wait, so you don't know approximately
No, not specifically. It was probably roughly, if I'm talking roughly, it was probably mid 2010s, like 2014, 2015, in that range. Yeah, technology takes a long time to become accessible, right? So when you talk about beamforming microphones, so these pods here, I mean, you all have them in front of you if you're local with the red line on them. There are actually little microphones in there, and what they're doing is they're actually looking for your voice, and they're actually beaming into it. So it's almost like having a microphone right to your face, but it's far away. The cool part about that is you sound a lot clearer on the far end. You sound a lot, people can understand what you're saying a lot better. You don't have to like look right at it. You can kind of be a little bit off. So like, for example, you're sitting here looking at me, it'll still pick you up because it's beaming to your mouth. So things like that are newer technologies that are really useful. And really what it helps the people on the far end, or people who aren't local, who can't hear your actual voice, so that they can hear you better. And then wireless content sharing. Anyone here have an Apple TV at all? Okay. Or do you have anything where you're able to like wirelessly, like a Chromecast or anything like that? So wireless content sharing is very important. And there's a lot of improvements on the corporate or the technology side for AV where you can do that robustly. So we're talking, again, 4K wirelessly from here to there without any cable, right? So it's pretty cool. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit future and trending. So some things that we have in here and that we're also looking into is, first of all, AI is a big thing. And we talk a little bit about artificial intelligence and machine learning and stuff like that. So we have cameras in this room currently, and we also have other technologies that are leveraging AI. And what I mean by that is on the bottom right of the slide, there is a bounding box that has identified a person or people in a room. It is able to determine that I am a human and I'm talking, and is able to follow me around the room as I kind of move around. So if I were to, move around and I was being tracked, it would follow me to almost look like a mock broadcast. If you ever watch like a really nice, broadcast on TV, where they kind of have the camera following the person, something like that. But none of that has to have a person behind it now. It's just AI. It just knows. And the cool thing about AI too, is it's upgradable. So the data it learns, from different people, if they tend to opt in, it's an opt-in type thing. You can feed that data back to either the manufacturer to conduct machine learning, which then allows you to feed the AI back to have better performance, right? So you're taking technology, you're incorporating it into a large database that then analyzes that data. It's able to determine how can we do this better, where are there mistakes, and it helps you incorporate a better model, right? And then we talk about programming languages. So for audiovisual specifically, the industry has always been more of a proprietary industry. So we're talking about technologies and programs that, in order for you to be an AV programmer, you have to learn AV specific code types. So things that I'll mention that probably nobody really knows about are things like Crestron Simple, AMX Netlink, stuff like that. So the only way you could really be successful as a programmer in the AV industry is you had to learn these proprietary languages. Now, there's good and bad about that. The good about it is it's very specific to the technology. So if you're learning this, you are able to apply it very quickly and you're able to learn it a lot quicker. The bad is not very flexible. And where we're moving to as an industry, as we are moving away from those proprietary systems and we're moving into more general, industry standard systems like C#, Python, HTML5 for a lot of the visual stuff like that. Swift is another one. So we're moving into these programming languages, and the good part about that now is if you are learning these languages, you now have a fast track to get incorporated and learn and grow in the AV career, whereas before you didn't have that possibility. So it's going to open up the availability and the talent that we can bring into the AV industry, because now people can come with just C# language experience or JavaScript or whatever the case may be, and they're able to now apply that to this industry versus having to take that and then relearn another language and then have to take all that time to learn it for a specific industry. So now it's really opening up that, which is great. I think it's a great move for the industry, and I'm really looking forward to what that's going to look like in the future. All right, so we talk about lessons learned. There's some pictures there. I was at some of these events too. Again, it's really talking about just leveraging the right technology for the right location, listening to what the needs are, making sure that you understand those, and you're not just making decisions based off of what you think is best because you think it is, but actually applying that to technology, and then making sure that the right technologies actually apply and they work. So how can you get here? If you're interested in kind of what we do in AV and integration, how would you get here? So I would say this is more just like life lesson stuff. It isn't specific to like go learn this, but just kind of how I got to where I'm at. Don't be willing to get your hands dirty. So what I mean by that could be actually don't get your hands dirty. I'm like, get your hands into technology, right? That could mean assembling racks, wiring, etc. It also could mean be willing to do things you're not necessarily comfortable with. So if you have programming experience, but you want to learn a little bit more about, maybe the network switching side and the configuration of switches. Well, you don't understand how exactly to program a switch, but you understand how programming works. So how do you apply that back and forth? Problem solving is key too. So one of the things I look for in a successful teammate is being able to solve a problem. And solving a problem isn't about technology, it's about a mindset. So how are you able to look at an issue, look at a challenge, and then come up with a game plan to address that issue as soon as possible? The other thing is being an effective team player. Really, no matter what you're in, making sure you're able to engage with different teammates and make sure that it doesn't matter. We don't like lone wolves. We want people who come together and work together, share their information, share their knowledge, and bring it together. And then for future growth, it's always wake up with the intent of nailing your day job. You've got a 9 to 5 if you're working full time, potentially, or depending on your job. So make sure you're doing that perfect every day, and then ask, how can you do more to help, right? So that's kind of how you continue to grow and continue to challenge, right? So really, just to finish, AV is doing a lot of really cool things. We are looking at things a little differently. AV used to be its own little niche. Now we're involved more on the IT side. We're involved in the network switching side. We're involved in AI. We're leveraging things like ChatGPT and other AI tools to help empower what we do. The future is really bright for AV. And I think a lot of the cool things that we're learning and applying show here. And I really am excited for not just what we have in here currently and how it's going to help grow the community and make everything better, but the future and what that's going to look like, leveraging AV. And I think that's it.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent.
Question
Excellent.
time.
Yeah. So
Thank you, Kevin, so much. I really appreciated how you were able to not just talk about your story, but give us more insight about the design and how did the hub come together and how the hub is part of emerging technology in the world of education. So thank you for that. This is the point of our presentation where we take questions. So we have some guests here in person, so certainly you can raise your hands. I have an iPad here, so our virtual guests, if you have questions, put it in the chat and I will be happy to read them out. Who would like to start?
So I do have a question and a comment, and I think that is important what you've been saying, that how the AV industry has really evolved and a lot in a short time. So 10 years ago, you were more concerned about cables and connectors and that type of stuff. Now you really need to have this foundational knowledge in IT networks and coding. And now you're even talking about AI and other stuff. So what would be your recommendation in that sense for somebody that is trying to get into the AV industry today, and why now it's a lot more, not that it wasn't before, but I think that now, as you have demonstrated here, the reach is complete, it is a lot, it's bigger, and now you're really encroaching into IT per se. So what would be your recommendation for somebody that is trying to get into the AV industry today?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
That's a great question. If I had to put myself in my shoes and I was coming up and I wanted to get into an industry, I think one of the important things to think about is don't focus your learning on just AV. Really broaden your experience and what you want to learn. So I would say to take more of a not a jack of all trades, not a master of none or of one, right? So you want to make sure that you're looking at some certain things to look at would be AI and how that's going to impact the future of human race, right? Looking at things like cybersecurity and how being safe and making sure that the data we have is going to protect us, because that's a big part. I mean, we have the situation, we have the technology and the capability of sharing anything we want to, right? So when you talk about deepfakes, you talk about things like that. We are a big part of that because we're the ones that are showing the video, we're doing the audio. So having a part in understanding the importance of making sure that we're doing things by the books and we're really focusing on cyber is important as well. From an AV perspective as well, I would say anything having to do with switch configuration. So getting comfortable with companies like Cisco, Aruba, things like that would be really helpful, because a lot of our devices don't interact with AV specific device anymore. They actually interact with network switches. So really understanding that would be really important.
I have a follow-up question. That thank you so much. That's great. So do you think that in this industry, some IT certifications are valuable? And if so, which ones would you kind of recommend?
They are important. A lot of the people we have now, I have a CCNA, so I went ahead and got a Cisco CCNA. I thought it was really impactful. I would really ask people to think about things like your Security Plus as well for the security side as well. But I think really focusing on network certifications and security and hardening and cyber are a really good path for sure. And there are AV specific things you can learn. And depending on where you work or what they're willing to do, a lot of those are very low impact or online. So you can just go online and learn a lot about AV without having to, go to a class per se. It could be all remote and hybrid. So there's a lot of good opportunities there.
Thank you.
There's a question here in the chat regarding AI. How will AI improve more than before in the future? More than before. So how will AI improve what we currently have for the future?
There's a couple ways to answer that. I think when I think about AI, just generally, I think it's going to help with tasks that are really difficult and really repetitive. So things where you have to look at a million spreadsheets to figure out an answer, AI can really help with that. Or things that we can really speed up efficiencies. From an AV industry, I see a big focus on AI helping us with service and support, right? So as a service technician, if you come out to a job site, you only have limited data and information to help solve a problem. With AI and connected through the internet and having the capability of doing that, we can now leverage AI to pull pertinent information about how to solve a problem, what the problem could be, specific parts of a system to make sure that we can pull that knowledge as quickly as possible, which will help us solve problems quicker. Therefore, we don't have to dig through a book. We don't have to pull up a laptop and do all these things. I think there's a really a good opportunity there. Another interesting part too is one of the things we hear a lot about is response time for support. And currently, a lot of that has to do with having a person in a seat answering a phone call or responding to a message. With AI, we can have that first step be, hey, how do we do concierge service? How do we bring people in to make sure that they're heard? How do we gather data through AI? That way we can feed it to a tier 2 or tier 3 person who can then take it from there. So now people feel like they have a quicker response. And quite frankly, if you've ever been to our website and you think you're talking to a human on a website, you're probably not. Probably not. I mean, you may be, but there's a high probability if you're doing like the chat, it's either a chat bot or it's partially driven by AI, and that eventually you will have some human interaction, but that's the first step. So those are really kind of two cool places. If you get a little more future setting, a couple of things in AV, which we're doing now, which are actually really cool. VR, everyone know what VR is, right? Virtual reality. We are designing things in VR and we're sharing those with our clients so they're able to walk through a room in VR to see how the room would look like, how they could interact with the room. And so it's not just on paper anymore, right? It's not just a rendering on a computer that you're kind of moving around as an architect. Now, you can put on a set of VR goggles and actually walk through your room. And you can actually see what the view from that camera over there would look like in VR. So a lot of cool stuff we're doing there too. And then another thing is AR, so augmented reality. I think there's a lot of advantage there for fabrication, building, and service as well. Having the ability to, instead of it being a full immersive experience with VR, now with AR, you can actually just kind of have either projection on your hand, or it could just be an eyewear that can project. Here's your manual. Here's your guide. Hey, I've got a video call going on with a subject matter expert who's going to talk to you and kind of walk you through it. So I think between VR, AR, there's a lot of cool opportunities as well.
It's the first color television program. My dad was a network TV writer, so I was literally underfoot with all this new technology coming in. I went to RCA Technical Institutes as a student. My particular instructor used to also moonlight at one of the TV stations in the Philadelphia region. So he taught us everything in broadcast television. I ended up building radio TV broadcast satellites at what used to be GE when they bought RCA. So we built 7 of the world's largest. They're roughly $3.4 billion of satellites. That's Dish TV, Direct TV, Intelsat, Sky TV, Europe, and such. I used to touch type at 90 words a minute. They took me by the collar. I was in the Satellite Launch Operations Control Center. And I was literally the flight launch operator, flight controller of Direct TV, putting it out 24,000 miles in Earth orbit.
Wow.
And one of the major difficulties today, if you take a technical person and tell them to be creative, they can't. They have no experience. If you take the creative person and tell them you must do things with a technical ability, they don't know how. So how do you integrate this between the two sides of the brain, so to speak?
It's a good question.
Yeah. How do you do that? You don't. So one of the things I would say is we are big about diversity, and you can talk about diversity in a lot of ways. But when I'm talking about it now, I'm talking about approach, mindset, what you're excited about, how you approach a problem. Everything we do at Vision, when we deliver, is a team-based mentality, which means we want to make sure that we have that technical person who is going to look at the nuts and bolts. We have that creative person who is going to think more about, do I really want to use this room the way it's designed right now? Or is there a better way? Is there a more approachable way? And then we bring these people together and we form groups. And these groups are actually, we like Tiger teams, they come together and they're the ones that develop the end product. So to your point, it's very difficult to find somebody who's strong in all those different aspects. I think the best approach is really to form a team who has different perspectives, who think different ways, and bring them together to a unified mission to complete and really deliver a great product. That would kind of be my approach to that. Make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Another question over here.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for coming in and sharing all of your information. For me, my question is accessibility and how in your role and as your team build that accessibility to a person who's not exposed or have the resources available to them. I definitely like this forum. I love to see it grow even more. But from your role and from your point of view, what do you do currently to have access to those that don't normally have access to this type of technology? And also, 5-year plan, what would you like to see happen?
So to clarify the 5-year plan, you would 5-year plan in terms of being able to accessibility. It's a great question. It's something that's really exciting about the industry now. So when we talk about accessibility, I think there's a couple ways to approach that. So I'll kind of tab on a bunch of them. First of all, when we talk about accessibility, there are rules, regulations, and guidelines that really drive that expectation. And that's important because if there weren't federal law and mandates to help drive accessibility requirements, we'd be all over the place, right? There'd be some places that were way above and beyond and places that were lacking. So we always start at square one. Everybody who's certified to engineer and design understands things like ADA. They understand things like hearing requirements and egress and making sure we can get wheelchairs and accessible and, you know, entrances and exits. So all that is thought into play. But with that being said, from a more of a, you know, like a technology perspective, it's changed so much in terms of accessibility. The things we're doing now, the people who are on the far end who are listening to this, in the past, you would have to have a $50,000 to $80,000 system to do this. So you're not doing it at your home. You're not doing it at the local community center. You're not doing it anywhere, any, you know, school local that doesn't have the funding. People on the far end are literally on a laptop. And that laptop doesn't even have to be like a high-end, you know, $2,000 laptop. I mean, we have people on like $200 Chromebooks who can literally participate in this. So when we talk about accessibility, it's leveraging great partners who are able to work and come together and make this a great experience for everybody. But it's also about providing that far-end experience, very impactful, low cost. So how do we grow and scale that? I think it's really about continuing to provide certain things like low cost laptops to all students who need them and people who need them in the world. It's also about internet. We still talk about, I mean, we are so blessed in this area and in Maryland in general to have such great broadband coverage, but reality is there's still gaps there. And places like the rural places in the Midwest, they don't have that internet access. So a big part of connectivity is making sure that we can connect people through the internet. Once that internet connection has happened, we can have Zoom and interaction from anybody with a $200 laptop. And that can be funded through all kinds of different you know, partners like Apple and Microsoft and large companies who are willing to invest in the country and invest in its people because they know if some person in, you know, Idaho who doesn't have internet all of a sudden has the technology, guess what? They could be the next Bill Gates. We don't know. But now they have the technology. It doesn't have to be $40,000. It's $200, right? Now they have the technology and the internet. They could be the next president of the United States, right? So we're here to help with that. I think AV is a great kind of place to do that because we have technologies like Zoom and Teams that allow that to happen. It's just going to become more and more available. Every day it becomes more and more available. So I'm really excited for the future there, for sure. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't see any more questions in the chat. Anybody else here in person? I'm using my wait time. Okay. Well, with that, I don't see, as I said, questions, and it looks like we're satisfied with the presentation and the information that was shared. Kevin, I would like to thank you again for taking time out to speak with us. I do have a thank you gift on behalf of the ignITe Hub for your time here. No, thank you. For those of you that are online and in here in the space, we have an event survey. Please take the time to fill this out. I'm sure that the link is already in the chat. This is really important for us. We share this feedback with our presenters so they know how their presentation went. But we also use it as the hub team to enhance our programming and making sure that we're bringing you information and content that is relevant and interesting for you. So it's very brief, just fill it out, and we appreciate that. With that, I will say after you fill out the survey, if you're here in person, we will proceed to our lunch that we have. Thank you again to Verizon for their sponsorship as well. And Kevin will stay for a little bit if you want to mix and mingle with him while he's with us as well. So again, thank you. Join us next month. We are in the home stretch here. We have one more fireside chat. We have one more Future of Tech. We have one more career workshop in December. So we hope that we'll see you in December and enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Thank you.